So I do have much to talk about in the next coming days in order to get caught up and to bring you guys all the reviews of everything I've seen. While I'm doing these videos, other people are doing it in other ways. Kim at Seattle Screams from the Horror Honeys is posting it at her Twitter, Seattle Screams, as I just said. And all of us are tend to be talking about it on Facebook at 100 Days of Horror, 100 being the numeral. Find it, search it there, and you can see what we're all talking about. Today's film is another film from my favorite actor, who I talked about during the course of the horror block. We have one Vincent Price, who came in as a bust last week on my horror block review that I made after the Castlevania review from day 2. Price is very well known for everything he's done in the horror genre. Everyone knows him. His best work is with the Edgar Allan Poe cycle, directed by Roger Corman from the AIP Pictures in the 60s. This isn't one of those, however, but Price does consider it to be his favorite of his Poe works. It's not directed by Roger Corman, it's directed by a man named Ken Johnson, and this is 1970s An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe. Here on a disc with the last of the Poe cycle, Tomb of Ligeia, which I recently wrote about on ageeknamedbob.com. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Go check that out. Favorite that, come back as I do my updates. And while you're at it, subscribe to me here and ring the bell so you know when I have something new coming out. So this 1970 made-for-television film from Ken Johnson. Ken Johnson is mostly known as a writer and a showrunner for shows such as V, which he created, the lizard alien movies from the TV show and Aliens from the 80s and 90s, and recently redone in the last couple years. The Incredible Hulk, the television show from the 70s, and Alienation from the early 90s from the 1980-something film. But Johnson isn't the star here, it's Vincent Price. Yay! In which Vincent Price is the only star. This Vincent telling us 4 different Poe stories on an empty stage with costumes, sets, and props. So it's the whole 9 yards when it comes to that, except he's just literally telling us the stories. It's really well designed, really well made, and Price puts so much into each of these stories that he's some guy you can just listen to speak to you for hours reading you the phone book, let alone reading you amazing tales from Edgar Allan Poe. In this case, he's reading us 4 different stories, some of which were adapted into the previous films, and some of which are new to us in this way. The first is The Telltale Heart, followed by The Sphinx, Casca Amontillado, and The Pit and the Pendulum to make up the 4 stories. The Sphinx is the only one that's not directly a horror story. It's ultimately a comedy, though there is horror to set up for it, but its great payoff is wonderful. And the Price had so much fun reading these, telling us these stories, and it comes through with the way that he's speaking and the way that it's pure glee that he has while still telling these stories. Whenever I've seen Poe read at drama competitions, it's always so big and loud and hysteric. And while many of these narrators are insane, Price does a great job of actually giving us access into their sanity, or their insanity in this case, of knowing they're a controlled sort of crazy, and it's fun with the gleefulness that goes through these stories that we've heard and read 100 times before in the past, especially if you're a horror geek like me, used to reading Poe as a child and still reads him occasionally. Last year I read through this book and the other Poe book I have with all the poems in it. This is on this disc, but it's also on the Shout Factory Vincent Price Collection Volume 2. So it's in Blu-ray and all pretty there, where here it's really low quality. That shows it's made for television status. I could never find out where it was shown. I did a little research and then didn't do a lot, but I did enough. I couldn't find out where and how it was shown, so it might have been just made there and eventually just put out on VHS tape with a bunch of these to eventually come to this DVD and now the Shout Factory Blu-ray. So yeah, seek it out, check it out. It's definitely worth your 53 minutes, and that's all it is.